So hello and welcome. It's wonderful to be with you tonight. I'm Kate Lipper-Garabedian, the state representative for the 32nd Middlesex District, which is comprised of Melrose, Wakefield, and Malden. I'm glad this legislative session to be a member of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. I'm also a proud member of the Zero Waste Legislative Caucus. And I'm glad to be your host and moderator for a timely discussion tonight as we elevate our consumer consciousness and clarify our choices for sustainable living. In elevating this virtual environment, we're pleased to bring together diverse people within diverse spaces. I want to especially acknowledge those joining us from the 32nd Middlesex District, as well as those from across the Commonwealth, and to thank the City of Melrose and the Town of Wakefield for co-sponsoring this event. I want to officially welcome you to my 8th community conversation. Tonight's theme, Consumer Action for Climate Resiliency, to assist viewers with considering purchases of solar power, heat pumps, and electric vehicles and decreasing their carbon footprints. With that, let's review our time together. After some brief context setting, and I'd like to ask that folks please mute if you can. We'll hear from Melrose Sustainability Director Martha Grover and Wakefield Town Council Chair Julie Smith-Galvin on how these municipalities are leading in supporting decarbonization efforts. I'll then turn it over to 3 unique panels who are going to focus on solar panels, heat pumps, and electric vehicles with discussions from resident owners and policy leads. Many attendees submitted questions in advance, and some may arise organically in the chat. Finally, we'll close with further resources for learning. So let's set the context. As a state legislature in a relatively short tenure, I was so thrilled to join my colleagues in committing to reach net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050. And now we are focused on the policies and programs that will help the state honor that commitment. The House recently, for example, passed far-reaching legislation on offshore wind to boost its economic benefits, its labor development, and to upgrade the electric grid. We also have identified a variety of budget bills as really good vehicles for climate action. Last week, for example, we passed our fiscal year 23 budget bill, and in that we extended the electric vehicle incentive program. The budget also continues the House's focus on environmental and climate protection, investing $350 million for environmental services and funding for environmental justice and climate adaptation and preparedness. Local policymakers likewise are leading in this space. I'm really grateful to represent a district with climate leaders like Martha Grover and Julie Smith-Galvin. And I'd like to invite you now to share some remarks on the efforts that are going on here in the 32nd Middlesex. Martha, maybe we'll start with you. Thanks so much for being here.
Sure, thank you very much. First, I'd just like to thank all of you, or welcome all of you to this community conversation on consumer action for the climate, and in particular, thank Representative Lipper-Garabedian and her staff for bringing my Melrose and Wakefield colleagues together, as well as other experts we've been working with for several years to share the latest and greatest information on what you can do to make a climate difference. Tonight's 3 topics, solar energy, heat pumps, and electric vehicles, are very timely, coming on the heels of the release of the Melrose Net Zero Action Plan on Earth Day. Our plan lays out actions we all need to make to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by getting rid of the fossil fuels we use to heat our homes and to get from point A to point B. And then as you electrify everything, you increase the amount of renewable energy used to power your heat pump and electric vehicle. The challenge is to get to zero emissions by 2050, and it's huge and daunting, but I think it can be done, and we're all here to help. Take good notes, ask good questions, and let's go, Melrose, Wakefield, and Malden. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Martha. And now we'll hear from Julie Smith-Galvin in Wakefield.
Thank you so much, Kate and Martha. It is a pleasure to be here and surrounded by so many very knowledgeable colleagues that you'll hear from, and I know there'll be a lot of learning. Climate can be a really overwhelming issue that we are confronting, but it takes all of us, municipalities, individuals, corporations, frankly, changing the whole system to be able to meet the goals that we have to meet to save the planet Earth. And that's why this topic is so important. I'm really proud of what Wakefield's been able to accomplish over the last couple of years, really with the support of Representative Lipper-Garabedian and her staff and Senator Jason Lewis as well. You've helped us get funding for solar energy, municipal solar energy, which is hugely important, right down to the community garden, which plays its own role in climate. Every little bit matters. Here in town, I would not say that we're trailblazers, but we are learning from our surrounding towns. We are trying very hard to do everything from composting to reducing plastic bags to food rescue. There's so much more to do. And in the next couple of years, we have big things on the agenda, like 2 new high schools, the vocational school and the high school. I actually have to leave this meeting early because Wakefield is applying to become a green community. As a town that's serviced by a municipal utility, we're a little late into that game. Certainly Melrose was probably one of the first ones in, but we're really excited by the opportunities it brings us to be able to change our energy structure and really reduce it. And a lot of that will actually come from the high school, we've recently learned. So that's exciting. Thank you so much for having me. I wish I could stay for the whole meeting, but I will certainly watch it and let the learning begin.
Well, thank you, Julie, so much for being here, and Martha as well. Again, that's Martha Grover, in the city of Melrose, our sustainability director, and Wakefield Town Council Chair, Julie Smith-Galvin. It's a pleasure to work with both of you. I look to both of you as such great resources, and it's just further evidence of the importance of the state-local partnership. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to our panels. We have 3 exciting mini panels tonight to support viewers with thinking about their choices for taking climate action. Our first panel will be on solar energy. I'll be joined tonight by Vikram Agarwal of Energy Sage, and then 2 residents here in the 32nd Middlesex, Tom Betcher, who is actually one of the commissioners on the Wakefield Gas and Light utility, and Gary Lamuth, our Melrose Energy Commission chair. Thank you all so much for being with us. I think we'll start with Vikram to sort of talk about at a state level, what people can be thinking about in terms of incentive programs that may exist, financing options, and then I know Tom and Gary will supplement your presentation and also share their own personal experiences with selecting the solar energy that works best for their homes. So thanks again for being with us, and Vikram, why don't you take it over?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll kick it off. Hello, everyone. I'm Vikram Agarwal. I'm the founder and CEO of Energy Sage. For those who you may know us or may not know us, let me give a quick introduction. Energy Sage is a resource for homeowners to learn about and comparison shop for solar. So the idea behind the platform is to make the shopping process for solar as easy as possible. You sign up on our platform and you end up getting quotes from anywhere from 3 to 6 solar companies who are pre-screened by us. These are all high quality, experienced solar companies, and we help you compare these quotes in a standardized apples to apples format. So that's what Energy Sage does. Of course, Massachusetts is a great state for installing solar on your homes. It offers an excellent financial benefit. Typically, what we are seeing in Massachusetts is payback periods of anywhere between 6 and 8 years. Of course, those are possible. Solar is an expensive product. It does cost thousands of dollars. But there are 2 very key incentives that make the solar investment in solar panels quite affordable. The first one is a 26% investment tax credit by the federal government. So this is essentially you are able to deduct the amount of taxes you owe by 26%. And then depending on your utility, the utility that you are who services us typically has some incentive programs. With the larger utilities like National Grid and Eversource, they have a SMART program, which allows you to actually get a higher price for the electricity that you are generating through your solar panels. So it reduces your cost and increases your returns on investment. So in terms of some advice for how you should think about going solar, my first advice is please shop around. Prices do vary quite a bit from company to company. We easily see prices can vary anywhere from 20 to 30%. Of course, Energy Sage makes it easy to get those competitive bids, but if you're going on your own, please get quotes from at least 3, if not 5 solar companies. And there are 3 primary decisions that you're looking to make. Number one is you want to make sure that you're buying the right equipment. This equipment, like solar panels and solar and inverters, and some of you may even choose to add a battery to your system. These systems are likely to work for the next 20 to 30 years. So you want to make sure these are good quality panels with the right kind of warranties associated with them. Number two is, of course, who's installing these panels. So make sure that you're choosing the right contractor. Look at their history and experience in installing solar. Make sure that they have the right training, they have right insurance, and other paperwork. Of course, check their rating and reviews on sites like Energy. Not the least is financing. Of course, most consumers are choosing to buy their panels. There is, of course, an option to lease panel, just like you lease your car, although that option is becoming less popular. But please evaluate your options for financing. Check with your local bank, local credit union to get the best option. Of course, solar installation companies also offer you financing options, but they tend to be, of course, easy to get, but slightly more expensive. So we always encourage talking to your own local bank to make that decision. I'll stop here and, of course, happy to answer more questions.
Thank you so much for that overview. And I think we'll turn it now over to Tom.
Hi. Welcome. Thank you. Tom Betcher. I am a Wakefield resident, homeowner, and a gas and light commissioner here in Wakefield. I'm going to speak to you tonight on wearing two different hats. First is a homeowner who did install solar, and then as a gas and light commissioner. So back in 2016, my family and I, we decided that we wanted to investigate solar, and things that were important to us is, reducing our fossil fuel consumption, reducing our energy bills, and, leaving in a better environment, better earth for our family. And so as part of that, we started to explore solar and diving into things. I started to talk to other folks that have solar, their experiences, recommendations. Like Vikram said, I went out and contacted several different solar installers, got quotes from those. At that time, I don't know that Energy Sage or an aggregator like them existed, so I had to kind of do the apples to apples comparison on my own. Asked a lot of questions, always very important. Needed to feel comfortable with my installer. So the installer that I ended up picking answered all of my questions, sat down, explained the technology, explained the different options that they were presenting, provided me with a return on investment and a TCO. At that time, there was no sort of incentive or rebate in Wakefield. And then we finalized on that contract with that solar company, and then we brought the system online in March of 2017. Quickly tried to maximize my investment in solar by shifting kind of my large electrical loads, drying, cooking where you can, dishwashing, added an EV to our mix when solar is available. Because of our experience with solar and things was kind of a catalyst for me to become a gas and light commissioner, so which is an elected position. So the energy efficiency and solar rebates that were kind of non-existent in Wakefield at that time were one of the reasons why I did run for gas and light. If we can move to the next slide. So in Wakefield, we now have a solar program. We have a rebate. It's a little different than what you might see in other parts of investor-owned utilities. We actually provide a straight rebate of $1.20 per watt installed. You are also eligible for the federal tax credit. which is 26% this year. That is starting to decrease to 22% in 2023, and currently is scheduled to be 0 in 2024 unless there are changes. There is a Massachusetts tax credit. Residents in Wakefield can put up to a 10 kW system on their home, and the excess power is we buy it back. So you sell it back to the grid at 85% of the energy charge rate on your bill. The SRECs, which are Solar Renewable Energy Credit, are retired by Gas and Light here, which is reported in our portfolio and meets our RPS, which is our Renewable Portfolio Standards. I did see a question in the pre-questions around my house home wasn't eligible for solar 5 years ago. Depending on if it's siting reasons or others, shading for whatnot, solar technology really hasn't changed to make that better. But there are alternatives if solar isn't for you for whatever reason. You live in an apartment, condo. So here in Wakefield, we are actually starting a community solar project. It is being built now. It will be coming online this summer. The details on how to subscribe to that community solar will be released soon. And something that you can do to help offset your carbon is a green rate. Wakefield, as well as the other investor-owned utilities, offer a green rate. Ours is called Your Power, Your Choice. What that is a little bit extra charge on your kWh on your bill that helps offset all of your carbon usage of your electrical use. And those purchase a Massachusetts Class 1 REC here. So you're helping to fund other renewable projects here in Massachusetts. We can move on to the next slide. So just kind of electrical usage and solar production. In my home, I actually have real-time usage, and I picked this particular date. We actually had a solar eclipse in 2017, so it's just kind of interesting to see when the sun went behind and it drops off. And it's important to kind of understand your utilization of your energy in your house and when solar is present. So kind of the yellow is the solar being sold back to the grid. The orange is where your energy is being satisfied by your solar, and the red is everything that you're purchasing from the grid. And over on the right side is kind of, you see the average kind of bell curve of solar throughout the year, starting with January and ending in December. So the summer, spring months kind of generate the most. We can move on to the next slide. And just kind of the economics of solar here in Wakefield. So this is a bill here in Wakefield for someone that has solar. This was actually last month. So this bill would have been $151 without solar. With solar, the bill was $46. So that's $105 savings with solar for the month of April here. And it just kind of reviews on how that cost is calculated. We can move on to the next slide. And these are just resources for here in Wakefield and understanding where to get help for solar. And we do have also in Wakefield, we have a solar coach. You can email that, and it's someone to help you out with solar here uniquely in Wakefield. So that's all that I have. If there's any questions, thank you for your time, and we can move on.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Tom. Really appreciate it. It's really a wealth of information, and I'm pleased now to have Gary talk a little bit about his own experience and also, what's happening here in Melrose.
Thanks, Kate. As was mentioned, I'm Gary Lamoth. I'm the co-chair of the Melrose Energy Commission. We're a group of volunteers. We volunteer our time and expertise to help Melrose residents and businesses save money and reduce their contribution to climate change by helping you reduce your energy usage and also helping you transition over to clean energy technologies, one of which is solar PV. First point I want to make, I want to get everyone comfortable with the idea of going solar by letting you know that solar is everywhere now. It's no longer a niche market that only early adopters are comfortable doing it. It's in our municipal buildings. That the middle school and the high school have the largest system in the city. There's the DPW building has a very visible large system. Our houses of worship are doing it. Currently 5 churches have sizable systems installed on them in Melrose. Our businesses, Hunt's Photo has had a large system for a while. The Cambridge Savings Bank has a carport that you park under that has solar panels on it. And then certainly just about every neighborhood in Melrose has at least one house that has it on there. So we only had 6 of them back in 2012 when we launched our first campaign to try to get residents to go solar. And then as of the end of last year, we were up at 510 installations in Melrose. So it's something that's just it's very common at this point, and you should feel comfortable doing it. So why are there so many of them? I'd like to think it's people have finally gotten religion and are trying to do what they can to reduce their contribution to climate change, but it's simply because the financials are so good. And here's a list of some of the incentives. I know that Vikram and Tom already touched on these, but one thing I want to emphasize is the biggest incentive is the federal investment tax credit, which is going away. So if you're thinking about going solar, do it now. This year or 2023 is the time to do it. Unless Congress acts to change things, the tax credit is down to 0% in 2024. So that's a pretty sizable incentive when you consider that in Melrose, the average solar installation is about 5 kilowatts, which translates to ballpark of about $15,000. So 26% of that is $3,900. That's a tax credit, not a tax deduction. It's $3,900 off of what you owe to Uncle Sam. So that going away in 2024 is, I really recommend you take advantage of that now if you're considering going solar. And then also, as Tom mentioned, the state also has a tax credit, not a tax deduction. So it's 15% of the total cost of the system up to $1,000. And then for Melrose residents or National Grid customers, there's also what's called the SMART program. It's a program that was designed to get people to go solar early on, and then it kind of phases out over time and decreases in value. So if you were to go solar this year, it might get you maybe a few $100s. So it's not a larger contribution, but certainly not as large as the tax credits are. A couple other benefits are you pay no sales tax on the equipment that gets installed. And for 20 years, the increase in your home's value that you realize by going solar doesn't get added to the assessed value of your home. So your property taxes don't go up. So those are all great reasons to go solar. So great. Solar's everywhere, and there are all these financial incentives in place to do it. Can I myself go solar? Answer is probably. There are real reasons why you may not be able to. If you have large, very tall trees or a tall building near you that just provides no sunlight to your property, then obviously you can't go solar. But with the price of panels dropping about 50% over the past 5 years, a lot of the factors that would disqualify people 5, 6, 7 years ago have gone away, or at least are not as big of an issue as they were before. So my recommendation is don't disqualify yourself. You may have heard from your friends or family or whomever that it's not a good idea for you. Just ignore that. And my recommendation is do the investigation yourself as to whether it makes sense for your situation. And in a couple of slides, I'll run through quickly how you can do that. The other issue that might determine whether or not you can go solar is affordability, right? And as was mentioned before, there are 2 primary options. I always try to recommend that people do an outright purchase of the system. If you can afford it, that's the way to go. It's got a high upfront cost, but it's a fantastic investment. You reap all the financial benefits that I listed on the previous page. It's yours when you're done. I've seen paybacks as short as 4 years, but typically they're about 6 or 7 years. Return on investment could be over 20% in some cases. So it's a great investment. If you can't do that, then what's most common as an alternative is a power purchase agreement. That's a case where an installer essentially borrows your roof for 20 or 25 years, right? And you sign an agreement with them. They pay to put the system on your roof, so there's no upfront cost to you. In return, they lock you in at a relatively low electricity rate for those 20 or 25 years, and they get to reap the benefit of all the incentives, but you get a lower cost on your electricity. So it's not quite as favorable from a financial standpoint, but it is certainly going to save you money on your utility bills, and it doesn't require you to have that big upfront cost. Just really quickly, just to kind of reinforce what was said already, this picture on the left is kind of the ideal house to put solar panels on. It would have been practically the only type about 6 or 7 years ago. It's south-facing roof. It's got no tall trees around it for shading. The roof doesn't have any skylights or vents or dormers to make things, to add shading or make things difficult. It's just it's your ideal installation. On the right, it's kind of hard to see probably, but friends of mine had tried to go solar in 2016, and because their roof faces east-west and they have all these tall trees around them that are in their neighbors' yards, they were eventually basically disqualified and said it just doesn't make sense for you guys to go. So fortunately, they reached out to me about a year ago and said, have things changed? It doesn't make sense for us now. And yes, things had changed. The price of panels has dropped so drastically that it now makes sense to put solar panels on non-ideal roofs. So long story short, they as I recommended, went to energysage.com and got, I think they ended up with 4 quotes. They narrowed it down and they chose somebody earlier this year. And then they're scheduled in June to put a system up that is going to be cover 100% of their electricity needs, the current electricity needs. So that's a very common situation nowadays. Something that was not possible 6 or 8 years ago is now very common. Very quickly, the process. I know Vikram kind of mentioned some of these, but we always recommend people go to Energy Sage. It's the easiest way to do it. You could do it anonymously. You don't have to have people knocking on your door, calling you all the time. You'll get, typically 3, 4, 5 quotes, and in the comfort of your own home, you can decide, which ones to invite over to talk more to. One thing we started recently urging people to do is to ask installers to size a system based on your future needs, not your current needs. Right? If you let them to their own devices, they're going to ask you for a year's worth of utility bills, and they're going to size the proposed system so that ideally, if you have enough room on your roof, to cover 100% of your current needs. But what happens if you buy an electric vehicle next year, or if you switch over to heat pumps? Right? Both of those use a lot of electricity. So, if you're so inclined, and I hope you are, and you want to cover your future needs as well as your current needs, let people know. And on Energy Sage is a place you can, add your own comments saying, please, size this assuming whatever, so 2 EVs or will be added to it next year or something like that. And then they'll come back and they'll supersize your system based on whatever your house can handle. So once you settle on 1 or 2 that you feel comfortable with, you can invite them over. They'll take a look at your house, if that's where you're putting the panels. They'll look at the roof structure to make sure it can handle the panels. They'll check your electrical service, that's shingles, whether or not any shading, any tall trees might be an issue, and they'll revise the quotes and send them back to you. So once you do that, once you get those revised quotes, you you make a choice, you sign a contract with the installer of your choice. They will perform a structural analysis on the roof, take care of the cost of doing that. They'll pull the permits with the building inspector. They'll schedule a time to start work. It typically takes about 2 days. And they're also responsible for getting the system connected into the grid. That's a wild card in terms of how long it takes. It's beyond the installer's control, and there are times it takes months to get that approval from National Grid. It's all in National Grid's hands, so that's the one catch that might delay installation. But as long as you sign a contract, by December 31st of a given year, that's what determines which incentives you get. So, next slide. I think I'm probably out of time, but just very quickly, I wanted to mention something about battery storage because it's becoming more common to see it in quotes from installers, even if you didn't ask for it. Batteries are a great complement to solar PV because they allow you to, your solar system will generate electricity, peak amounts around noon to 3 during the day. But the peak usage occurs actually when people get home from work, typically, so like 5 to 7 at night. So batteries allow the excess energy generated by solar panels to be stored in batteries and then used when needed later on in the day. And because of that, there are incentives available for these batteries. I don't know if I have time to run through them, but my point is that you may see these in quotes that you get from installers. And whether it makes sense for you or not depends on how important, having continued service during power outages, for example, or how much you want to help the grid, use the solar energy that's generated during the day, at the time when it's most needed. So that's the kind of thing that we can help you, make decisions on. If you want to reach out to us at the Melrose Energy Commission.
I think you have a slide on. There we go. Yeah.
There you go. And that's how you can reach out to us, melrosesolarcoach@gmail.com. Whether it's just how do I get started, or hey, we've got 5 quotes and we don't know what to do, we're happy to help you. And then the one below that is a general melroseclimateaction.org. It has a bunch of information on how you can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions beyond solar, heat pumps, and EVs. So there you go. Thanks for your time.
Thanks to all 3 of you. And we also had some great conversation happening in the chat. I want to elevate a comment from a resident here who noted, just as you all presented, that initially the family got a quote, was told that solar wasn't an option for them, but that things have shifted enough, including Gary, to your point around different roof lines. And so when they checked in a few years later, in fact, they were told that they now are eligible, that the solar panels could work there. So it's a good reminder. So Tom, I think you want to share one last thought before we turn it over to the next panel.
Yes, just wanted to touch on a couple of things that are a little unique to Wakefield that Gary had mentioned. One is Wakefield, we do not allow PPA type installs for solar. And then from the financing standpoint, there is the mass solar loan that's available to everyone, but here in Wakefield, you are residents for both solar and energy efficiency combined can do local financing through our cooperative bank, and it is something that you engage the utility with, and they will connect you with that program with the local community bank here in Wakefield for those financial options. Sorry, I can't speak. So that you can kind of bridge that gap until those federal credits and incentives come in.
Thanks to all 3 of you so much for this very informative panel discussion. Obviously, your contact information is available both in these slides, and you can find more information online. I'm grateful to have had a chance to learn from you and to stay in touch, and to know that both Wakefield and Melrose, and I'm certain many communities around the Commonwealth, are providing resources to residents and contact information like the one here for consideration. So we're going to turn out now over to our panel on heat pumps. So tonight we'll be hearing from Melanie Cohen with National Grid to provide a sort of a state overview of the various resources and programs that are available for your consideration, and then talking to two resident experts owners, Susan Murphy in Melrose, who's on the Energy Commission. She'll provide a bit of another heat pump 101 in addition to discussing her own experience owning a heat pump, and Pete Davis in Wakefield. Thank you all three for being here, and we'll start with you, Melanie.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here talking about our heat pump program, the Mass Save heat pump program. I did want to mention that, this program and all of the Mass Save programs are statewide programs. Oh, dropped my phone. Statewide programs that are available for any of the investor-owned gas and electric utility customers and customers of Cape Light Compact. So if you are a customer of a municipal electric or gas company, unfortunately, you're not eligible for these programs, but I urge you to go check out the programs that your local utility has, because many municipal utilities have developed their own programs. So you can go to the next slide. So heat pumps are a huge priority of this new 3-year plan that just started in 2022. And because of that, we have developed quite a few educational resources for our customers, or, really for anyone who wants to visit the Mass Save website. We've launched a residential heating comparison calculator. You are able to input different characteristics of your home, your energy use, and it will, the output will show you a comparison of heating system upgrade options, including heat pumps, and you can compare your cost savings, your greenhouse gas emission reduction savings, your energy savings, based on your own home characteristics. We've also launched something that we're calling a heating and cooling consultation. These are no-cost virtual consultations with a technical specialist. It's available to all of our residential customers. If you're considering upgrading your heating system and you have questions and you want to talk to someone, before you have a contractor in your home who is unbiased and can have a very frank conversation with. So you can, again, you can visit the website you do have to be a customer, unfortunately, to access that service. And we're also, we've done a lot of updating to our website. We have a home, a heat pump homepage. It provides a lot of information about the different types of heat pumps, and among other important heat pump resources, including the rebates we offer, which we'll get to. So you can go to the next slide, please. So we have quite a few heat pump rebates available to our customers. One thing that is actually new to this term, this 3-year term, is rebates that are available to gas customers to convert to heat pumps. So that wasn't available in the last 3 years. We're really excited to be able to offer rebates to our gas customers if they choose to convert to a heat pump. We have both partial home and whole home rebates. So if you choose to partially displace your pre-existing central heating system, there's a rebate of $1,250 per ton for an air source heat pump and $2,000 per ton for a ground source. If you decide to fully convert to heat pumps in your home, both either air source or ground source, or air to water, the rebate is $10,000 per home for air source and $15,000 per home for ground source heat pumps. Something I do want to mention is that we have also launched what we call an heat pump installer network, otherwise known as the HPIN. And this is a network of HVAC contractors in the state that we are onboarding into the network. If they choose to be if they want to be included, they'll have to complete some, trainings to stay in the network. And this is really a way for us to, and ensure that the contractors are educated to be able to, right size the system. We want them to understand the importance of weatherization. Basically, we want them to be able to talk to the customers and feel comfortable installing heat pumps, because that was one of the barriers that we discovered, is that just a lot of contractors are just not comfortable with the technology. And beginning in 2023, we are going to be requiring customers to use a contractor from that network to be able to access our rebates. You can go to the next slide. So we are requiring that customers show that their home is sufficiently weatherized in order to be able to access that whole home rebate. And so your home may already be weatherized. You may have participated in our weatherization program in the past, or maybe your home is on the newer side, or maybe you don't have any weatherization opportunities. Those things are all okay. Those will all, get you qualified. Or if you do need weatherization, or if you don't know, you can schedule a virtual or on-site home energy assessment. This is when an energy specialist will come to your home, and based on your home characteristics, will talk to you about weatherization needs, and also heating system upgrade recommendations. If you can't prove this, or you choose not to weatherize, that's okay. You will default to that $12.50 per ton rebate amount. You can go on. And I do quickly want to mention, I think this slide didn't make it in, but we do offer a $500 bonus for customers who are partially displacing their central heating system. And if you do have weatherization opportunities in your home, and you install weatherization and insulate your home, and then you install heat pumps, you can get this $500 bonus. We're really trying to encourage customers to pursue weatherization before installing a heat pump. It increases the probability that your heat pump will be sized correctly for your home. And just having a weatherized and insulated home, it will just make you more comfortable. You're not going to be losing heat in the winter, or cold air in the summer. And I quickly just wanted to mention, what I was just talking about is really for our retrofit, existing building customers. There are other pathways to participation if you are building a new home, and there are programs. We also offer programs like our Passive House, our all electric home program, where you can get up to $25,000 per home for, making your home all electric, installing heat pump water heater, and then we do have income eligible programs. We not listed here. We have a we new this term are moderate income incentives. These are for customers between 60 and 80% of the state median income. And there are actually very generous incentives for those customers to install heat pumps. And that will be rolled out hopefully sometime this month. Then our income eligible programs. This is for customers that have a household income of less than 60% of the state median income. And this, if you are in this income bracket, you will be able to get your energy efficiency upgrades at 100% covered by our programs. And then there are, multifamily programs and commercial and industrial programs, including small business. So I urge you to check out the website. There's a lot of information there. We will be doing a refresh sometime later down the year to make it a little more user-friendly, but that's it. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And I also just want to note that Tom Betcher from Wakefield has also shared in the chat that Wakefield does have a heat pump rebate program and provides free consultation as well. You can learn more about that on the municipal utilities website. Susan, let's turn it over to you to hear more about Heat Pumps 101 and your own experience having one.
Thank you very much. My name is Susan Murphy. I am a long-term time member of the Melrose Energy Commission. And I also, my link to this is I ran Melrose's Heat Smart program. So a couple of years ago, through the Mass Clean Energy Center, we ran an education and outreach campaign where we worked with specific installers who were providing a discount to residents who installed both air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and solar hot water. We had over 100 air source heat pumps installed in the city in the course of that program. So I'm going to take a step back and just for people who don't know much about heat pumps, talk about how they work. I'm going to focus on air source heat pumps because they're sort of the most common, but I'll mention the other options along the way. So first, just what is an air source heat pump and how does it work? So what it is a heating and cooling system that transfers heat in and out of the building. Generally, you'll have an outdoor unit, which is the picture on the left, connected to one or more indoor units. Those are the ductless systems that are also called mini splits. You may have heard that term. You can also have ducted heat pumps as well. And what it is, it's basically an air conditioner that's also able to run in reverse. So like an air conditioner strips the heat from the air in your home and dumps it outside, heat pump is able to do that, able to pull the latent heat from the outdoor air, even down to really low temperatures, and concentrate it and put it into the home to keep the home at a comfortable level. Because it's just moving heat around instead of generating the heat, either through burning fossil fuel or electric resistance heat, it's 2 to 3 times more efficient than any other fossil fuel system or electric resistance heat. So the maximum efficiency of a conventional heating system, electric resistance, is 100% efficient. These are 300% efficient because they're not generating the heat, they're just moving it around. And they also provide very efficient air conditioning as well. So next slide. Thank you. So, real reason that people install these, they have a lot of environmental benefits, but there are a lot of benefits for the homeowners that have been really driving the success of heat pumps and why we had such a successful campaign. There are so many benefits. There's the energy savings, but there's also the fact that these are providing really quiet, efficient air conditioning. And for a lot of older homes like we have in Melrose, where you have a heating system, but people don't have central air and they don't have ductwork. These are systems that you can use to provide whole home air conditioning in your house that's extremely efficient, that's quiet, that's providing dehumidification, and that also provides really efficient heat. They're really flexible solutions, in addition to the kind of classic high unit on the wall that you saw in the last picture. There are ceiling cassette units. There's a picture there. There are floor mounted units. The bottom picture shows the outdoor unit of a ducted solution. But there are a lot of ways that you can do it. And because you have a lot of indoor units with these ductless mini splits, you have built into it a lot of zoning. You can address cold and hot spots or areas of your home that are used more. There really advanced technology. They have all really smart controls. You can do all sorts of stuff with these units, direct them to point the heat in particular places. The controls are really elaborate. And they're just really comfortable. They provide a really consistent, nice, warm heat. So people really enjoy having these in their homes. Next slide. So some of the considerations that you want to be thinking about if you're doing that, this is really something you need to plan ahead to do. So if you have a natural gas system or oil system, if it breaks down in the middle of the winter and you need to suddenly replace it, you're not going to be able to just suddenly throw one of these things in. So it really, it does take some looking ahead and planning ahead and getting some quotes and figuring out how to do this system. But there are a lot of benefits to doing that as well. Sometimes people will have these systems and will use it in conjunction with their existing heating system. I think that was one of the questions from one of the attendees was using it with a propane system. That's an extremely common use of these, is to install the mini splits, but keep your existing system. And the air source heat pumps do have lower efficiency when it's cold out because there's less heat in the air to strip. So some people can switch over to their existing heating system in the coldest months, and that can be an economical way of doing it. And you can change where that turnover happens depending on the relative cost of the heating system. there are integrated controls that are available that allow that to happen automatically without you even having to pay any attention to it. As Melanie said, you definitely want to do your insulation and air sealing work beforehand. That's required for National Grid, but it's definitely something you want to do. You'll be a lot more comfortable. And it's good to understand how these systems work. There are some differences. They are really intended to provide like steady heat. You don't do like deep setbacks at night with a heat pump system, which people like. They don't get up in the middle of the night freezing when they go to the bathroom, but you have to be aware of it because it won't bring the house up to temperature quite as quickly, because they really operate best at a steady heat. And obviously there are huge environmental benefits to it. Compared to any other heating system, you will get great benefits in terms of carbon reductions. And the great thing is that as the grid gets cleaner and cleaner, you'll be getting better and better environmental benefits without doing anything more to your system. I did want to mention the other types of systems that are available. So air source heat pumps work by pulling heat from the air. There are also ground source heat pumps that require wells to be drilled, usually in your yard. Those are really the most efficient system you get because the ground's such a consistent temperature, but also are more expensive because of the drilling. My system that I have at my house in Melrose is actually a ground source heat pump system, and those can work through radiators or, yeah, I don't know if you can see behind me, it's not actually a mini split in this system because, but it has those sort of indoor units, so you can have all sorts of configurations. And something that's pretty new in Massachusetts, but is used a lot in Europe, are the air to water systems, where you can connect an air source heat pump to a radiator system. That's more common in Europe, in places where you don't want the air conditioning. The air conditioning is not an issue. I saw them all over Ireland, for example. So people here will often want to take advantage of the air conditioning, but an air to water system is also an option. And I just wanted to mention costs. Mass CEC has some nice cost information on their website, but it's a little bit out of date, and cost seems to be a moving target right now, as we know about everything. So now particularly get a lot of quotes, get several quotes, get at least 3 quotes to see where things are falling out. And also operating costs are changing a lot. When we did Heat Smart Melrose, at that time, you would say, you definitely get savings over propane or electric resistance. With oil, it sort of depended on where the prices were. And natural gas, you pay a little bit more with the heat pump, but with the current natural gas prices, that's really changed. I'm glad to see that National Grid has a cost comparison, because it was really hard to find a good one when we were doing Heat Smart Melrose. So I put in the link for the Efficiency Main one, which I found helpful, but it's great to see that National Grid has one as well. So I think that's all I have. So I'm interested to hear about Pete's experience.
Yeah, let's turn it over to Pete. Thanks so much, Susan. And Pete, glad to have you with us to talk a little bit about your experience exploring and then selecting and installing and using a heat pump.
Great, thanks so much, Kate. So just in terms of Wakefield, I do want to just touch on some of our incentives. So we do have our own municipal light department that handles both our electric and gas. We love our WMGLD, but we don't have as deep pockets for funding some of these incentives from our customers. So in terms of what incentives we do have, we provide, and I received this myself, $500 per ton for a heat pump, up to a maximum of $2,000. And then Wakefield also has a cap of, WMGLD also has a cap of $2,500 per year on total incentives. The reason that's important, and I think Melanie did a great job touching on it, is it's really important to do air sealing and make sure your house is well insulated. One of the things about heat pumps is they don't pump out ridiculously hot air, which is really nice because you don't have scorching hot air pouring out at you. But it also means that they're not going to be able to make up for tons of cold air leaking into your home. So do make sure you take advantage of anything you can to do things like air sealing and additional insulation in your home, because it's going to allow that unit, as Melanie said, to be sized much better and also just work much better for you. In my case, I went with an air source heat pump. I got about 4 quotes, and it was kind of sticker shock. As Susan mentioned, there's been a significant increase in price. I would say it's probably about double what it was when I did air conditioning many years ago. These units are about double at this point, given inflation and other things. The units themselves have really improved technology-wise over the years. It used to be that a heat pump, you got to 30, 40 degrees and the thing couldn't produce heat anymore and only just sent out cold air. These days, any heat pump you're going to get in this area, you're going to get something that can deal with a cold climate. Mine can work up to -22 Fahrenheit. But the thing about heat pumps is you really need to look at not just what it claims it can do for tons, but how the BTU output is on various temperatures. And so my favorite website that I looked into when I was looking into doing a heat pump is from neep.org. It's ashp.neep.org. And it lets you put in the particular vendor and product you're looking at installing for a heat pump. And it's going to give you both efficiency information, which is important as far as how much electricity it's going to use, but also BTU output, which is critical for knowing, is this thing going to be able to produce enough heat for your home? One of the things that any good installer is going to do is make sure they're measuring the heat loss in your house, because this unit has to be able to, or units, in my case, I have 8 of them. They have to be able to make up for whatever heat loss you're going to have in whatever conditions you're dealing with. In my case, I ended up not opting for a system that was going to cover 100% of my heat. I have natural gas in my home. Our natural gas rates are pretty low. My unit can handle my house well at about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I end up doing, and there were some questions on that in some of the questions we got, is I end up keeping my boiler, which is my natural gas system, at about thermostats at about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And I keep my heat pump to be higher temperature. And that way, if for some reason my split ductless units can't keep up with the heat in my house, it will allow my boiler to kick in and deal with the heat needed for my home. There's 2 other things in Wakefield that are really good resources and are prerequisites for getting those incentives. Wakefield requires you to do an energy assessment. We have a third-party Next Zero, which you can find out off the link Tom had provided in the chat. They'll help you look at things like insulation needs as well and make some recommendations. And there's also a third party that Wakefield works with that will do both a pre-assessment and a post-assessment on your heat pump, and you have to get approval before you go and install it. And that company is called Abode. And they have both a really nice PowerPoint presentation, which you can find linked off the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department website, but they're also a great resource. They're there to answer any questions that Wakefield residents have on units. If you want help sizing, comparing various quotes, that's a great resource available to folks. And then I think the one thing, I could go on for hours talking about heat pumps. I know I don't have that much time, but the thing I'll say just from my experience, and I went split ductless for mine, what I really was truly impressed about is just how amazingly quiet they are. I mean, I have baseboard in my home, and baseboard is fairly quiet, other than every now and then you hear some clicking. It's amazing how quiet the split ductless units are. I end up going not with the top of the line Mitsubishi Hyperheat, which is, Mitsubishi has done an amazing job at trying to get the max BTU output of units in some very cold climates. But I found that unfortunately the cost to go that path was double the cost for me to go for, I'm going to call it like a generic type of unit. So I ended up going with more of a generic type of heat pump, made in probably the same factory in China as many of these other ones are. And I'm extremely pleased with my choice. And I'm looking forward to also being able to use it for air conditioning as well. So as was mentioned, the really nice thing about them is they can do both your heating and cooling needs, and they can work in homes where maybe you don't even have any existing ductwork to work with, as my house. So I could go on for hours, but I'm going to call that a wrap on my part.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks to all of you for this informative panel discussion on heat pumps. We've also had some really great questions and answers in the chat, which is, evidence that people are really thinking through your presentations. And in this round robin of speed dating of our panels, I'm realizing we could have added a 4th around weatherization. So that's another thing that's maybe a prerequisite for some of these climate actions we're talking about tonight, and is an end in and of itself to sort of support climate resiliency is thinking about weatherization of your homes. So maybe a to be continued community conversation at a later date. So thanks to Melanie, Susan, and Pete for being here. Really grateful for your expertise and your contributions. Our last panel tonight is on electric vehicles. Susan is going to stay with us to provide sort of a state overview of the incentive programs. And we're also joined tonight by a Melrose resident, Jay Garg, who is an EV owner, as well as Kristen Weekly, a Wakefield resident. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. We're going to start with Susan to just provide a brief overview of electric vehicle programs that exist. And Susan, you are muted. That's okay.
Always do that. Okay, hi again, Susan Murphy, Melrose Energy Commission. This is stepping in to just give a quick overview. This is just such an exciting time to be involved in the EV market and industry. You know, there's so many new things going on. So, you know, great targets being set sort of all across the country. The Biden administration having a target of that 50% of new cars will be EVs by 2030, which is incredible to have that be a national target. You know, California has set a target of 100% of new cars being EV by 2035, which they've translated to 68% by 2030. I've lost track of whether Massachusetts has actually like set on a target, but for the net zero action plan that Melrose is doing, we're looking to try and get to 60% of new cars being EV by 2030. And then you have all these car manufacturers who are totally on board and saying they're going to sell 50% of their sales are going to be EVs by 2030, and they're going to be 100% EV by 2035 and 2040. It's Ford, it's GM, you know, it's just really exciting. And you can see it in the cars that you're seeing around on the street, and we have some data about car sales in Melrose that we were getting, you know, 2.5% of the new cars in 2020 were EVs, and it's up to 7% in 2021, just in a year's time. So we really feel like we can be on track to meet these really ambitious goals. And part of that is because the car manufacturers are coming out with such great options. There's, you know, a few years ago when I was shopping for my first EV, you know, you had like 4 choices, you know, and now there's just dozens of them. There are over 20 new models for 2022. And I think people are realizing the benefits that EVs give you. They're better acceleration, they're quieter. This is really the most advanced technology. You can really tell you're in a modern car. There's less maintenance. So it's just a really exciting time. So I'm going to talk about some of the incentives. So next slide. So there are state and federal incentives for purchasing new EVs. I think there was a question for someone whether there are used EV incentives. There are not in Massachusetts. I think California is the only one that's doing it, and it's a little bit more of a clunker trade-in program than just an EV program. But in any case, what our incentives are, there's a Massachusetts rebate program. So that's a $2,500 rebate on what they call battery electric vehicles. Those are all electric, don't have any gas engine or fuel cells, for a vehicle up to $50,000 purchase price. There's also a rebate on plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So those are ones that you can plug in. They'll have a smaller battery and they also have a gas engine. If it has an electric range of 25 miles or more, that could be eligible for a $1,500 rebate. There are rebates on other vehicles as well in Massachusetts, but those are the main ones. And then the federal tax credit program. So up to $7,500 in federal tax credits for buying an electric vehicle. So that's for both all electric or for plug-in hybrid, but the amount depends on the size of the battery. So often with the plug-in hybrids, you won't get the full amount because you have a smaller battery. And I've included some of the links for those sites. There are also, you know, a lot of other programs where we're focusing on residents, but there are workplace charging programs, there are fleet grants, there's a lot of other stuff going on. Next slide. And then in terms of charging, you know, that has also just changed. The charging infrastructure is so much better now. And, you know, and particularly in Melrose, we've made a real effort to have public chargers available to make EV ownership accessible to renters. We have a network of these pole mounted chargers, if there's a picture there, as well as some other public charging stations. So you really can just find a place to charge your car in Melrose. It's easy to do. For home charging, There are programs through both National Grid and through the Wakefield Municipal Electric Company. So National Grid has a Charge Smart. There are rebates for off-peak home charging. It's not available for every EV, but a lot of EVs that allow you to control the timing of your charging. The intent of these is to shift that charging into like the off-peak hours, so that you're not charging when you come home and you just plug it in. That's when everyone's using electricity. So if you can time your charging and move it into the middle of the night, that benefits the grid, and you'll get rebates for it. The Wakefield program, my understanding is that they actually will provide you with a charger. You will get an EV charger to install at your home, and they'll be able to control the timing of the charging. Just some other resources. I think they're great resources at Green Energy Consumers Alliance for EVs, and it's great to see them in person. There are usually a lot of local showcases around in the spring and summer. We are having one in Melrose on June 18th at the Melrose High School parking lot from 10 to 1. And I think we're going to have a lot of models if you just want to come and check out what's available. We have a lot of EVs in Melrose, and a lot of people are excited to come show them off. So look forward to seeing you.
Thanks so much, Susan. Let's turn it over to Jay to talk a little bit about his ownership of an electric vehicle.
Good evening, everybody. This is Jay. I'm just an enthusiast. I've been driving such vehicles since 2009. I've had the fortune of attending a number of speaking events for electric vehicle launches. Actually, the most recent one I did was the Polestar launch. There's a brand new Polestar. As Susan said, there are more vehicles, more new EVs being launched practically every other week. This picture I chose is actually a picture from Norway. Norway currently leads the entire world in terms of EVs. They have greater than 65% of EVs. That includes, plug-in hybrids. Certainly I'd like to see, our great nation also get up there in terms of 100%. But Norway is sort of setting the standards that we can all aspire to. So this is a busy street. As you can see, there are chargers everywhere. I guess this is what we can dream. But I'd like to take a few minutes to, help to debunk a few myths about EVs and hopefully educate. So as Susan mentioned, just to catch everybody up, so I think everybody knows what a conventional gas vehicle is. Runs on gas or diesel, depending on your country, sometimes even kerosene and propane. Conventional hybrids were launched as early as 1999. So I used to have a vehicle called a Honda Insight that still ran with a gas engine, but had a very small electric motor and a very small battery. You couldn't charge it, but it was great for basically puttering around. The Toyota Prius you get today is this equivalent. Next slide, please. Further advancements have increased battery sizes. So there are now a number of different batteries you can get, the most common being lithium ion, but also things like lithium polymer. Certainly Tesla and some of the other companies are making huge strides in the space. So you have a plug-in hybrid. You could, depending on the size of the battery, you could go maybe 15 miles up to some of them, like the Chevy Volt, now it's not sold anymore, but you could go as much as 50 miles. And then of course you have battery powered. So, fully battery powered. For the purposes of this presentation, we're sticking to a big battery in the vehicle rather than a hydrogen fuel cell. So, maybe that's another sort of going where things are going with this technology. But, battery power has actually come quite a long way, with greater than 75% of vehicles being able to support a greater than 200-mile range that we'll see in the preceding slides. Next one, please. So for people who have range anxiety, the Lucid Air, which was recently released, I cannot afford one, but it goes roughly 520 miles per charge. So it shows you how far battery technology has gotten. Certainly the batteries are heavy, but they've proved through very sophisticated engineering that you could have really long ranges in vehicles. And what's starting to happen as well, and I'll talk about in the next few slides, is the rate at which vehicles charge and the rate at which batteries accept current is increasing. So you don't necessarily need a very high range. You need something that charges faster. If you could please go to the next slide. So just talking about charging. Oh, actually, one back, please.
I think the next slide is on
perfect.
incentives, and I think Susan did cover those generally. So.
Correct. Yeah. So so just briefly on the charging, and I'll skip over the incentives. So just want to talk about. So everybody has level one. Level one is your basic 120 volt outlet at home. For those that do not have any kind of 208 or 240 volt circuit, you can use your level one. Things will charge much slower. Your level two is fairly common, and as Susan mentioned, I think the cities of Melrose and Wakefield have done a tremendous job in encouraging level two chargers. So you see in the amp up EVs, the picture that Susan showed, those are great. To actually come down from a pole and help you charge your vehicle relatively faster. On average, on a level two, you could charge your vehicle, depending on battery size, in about 8 hours, 8 to 9 hours, maybe a little slower if it's a bigger battery. And then you have DC fast charge. This slide is already a bit old. You have even faster, as you've heard about, Electrify America has certain stations that are 350 kilowatts. The recently released Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 are some that can accept faster charging. They don't accept 350 yet, but up to 230 kilowatt charging. So they're even faster. On average, for example, a Hyundai Ioniq 5, depending on the right conditions, can charge from 0 to 80% in about 30 minutes, maybe less if it's 10 to 80%. Next slide, and I think, so it's just a quick view into plugs. Like iPhones and Androids, unfortunately, there are many different types of plugs, but basically most vehicles can use a level one and a level two. If you own a Tesla, you do need an adapter. There are a bunch of, Tesla also has, through partnership with businesses, what's called a destination charger. You can actually buy, if you have a regular Chevy Volt or a regular vehicle that accepts J772, you can actually buy a little tap for them. So it can convert from a Tesla charger to a regular charger. Next slide, please. And then within the DC fast charging arena, you have basically three main types today, and this is the US only, by the way. Once you get overseas, the chargers look a little different. But you have CCS, which is the predominant standard in the US. You still have what's called the CHAdeMO, which actually originated in Japan. You see a number of vehicles such as the Nissan Leaf that have CHAdeMO. And then, of course, you have the Tesla superchargers. A quick note, only Teslas currently can use the Tesla superchargers, although there is talk about, perhaps Tesla opening those superchargers up to other vehicles. It's already being done in Europe in places like Norway. But like I said, the DC fast charging allows you to charge at 480 volts and even up to 800 volts. So it's very, very quick. Next slide, please. And then just a few resources. So for those that are interested, certainly please ask questions. But there are these days a number of apps you can use. ABRP is also known as a Better Route Planner. That's actually a relatively new app. There are a few cars that actually have ABRP app built in. And one of them is the Polestar, but it acts very much like a Tesla. Once you plot your course, it tells you where you must charge, how fast the charging will be, and for how long you need to stop there. But like I said, there are a number of other apps such as PlugShare, and then usually Blink, EVgo, Electrify America. Next slide, please.
And I'll share that Tom from Wakefield is putting in the chat that Wakefield already has one DC fast charger and 3 more are scheduled thanks to a state grant, which is nice given proximity to the highways.
Excellent, very good, thank you. And then, in general, and again, happy to share these slides, but there are a number of ways to look at EV affordability, as Susan and some of the other panelists have mentioned. But and this doesn't include what gas costs today. By the way, these are actually numbers from I think 6 or 7 months ago when we did this presentation. But by and large, you can save quite a bit of money. And the fact that operating costs and running costs for electric vehicles are lower, You don't need oil changes. Certainly, you don't need gasoline. And if you end up putting a solar panel and air source heat pump on your home, as we hope you do, basically you're charging using solar. So that's what I do in my home. Just basically all the excess is sent into the car, and then any excess is sent back to National Grid. Next slide, please. And then again, here are some of the other benefits of, of course, reducing all our carbon footprint and reducing the amount of barrels of oil we consume. Next slide. And then a few more benefits, of course, for reducing emissions. But I know we're a little short on time, so we can skip over this one as well.
Thanks so much, Jay. That's really helpful. Why don't we turn it over to Kristen to hear about your own experience as an EV owner?
So I don't have as fancy of a presentation, but talking a little bit about how much the technology has changed. When we got in 2017, we got a Nissan Leaf. That was a 2015 Nissan Leaf, and it was a less than positive experience, to be completely honest. The range was very low. It was very, in the winter, the heat didn't work very well. We ended up getting rid of that car and we got a Chevy Bolt. So I actually have a plug-in hybrid. I primarily use the battery because it goes about 50 to 60 miles on a charge. And I do have solar panels, which, really helps with the cost of charging. But our experience with that one and then other like electric vehicles that I've driven since my terrible experience with the Leaf have been really, really positive. The technology is just a lot better. Like you don't have to, obviously I have changed the oil on the Chevy Volt. I think it's like twice in the last 4 years because that's all it's required. And it lets you know when you've used the engine enough that you have to change the oil. But when you're in a full electric car, you don't have to worry about oil changes. You don't have to worry about changes of belts or changes of fluids or any of that stuff. It's very simple technology, not simple technology, but very uncomplicated. If anybody has had a belt break on your car, that happened to me about 10 years ago and it completely destroyed the engine of my Volvo. And it was something where there's so little that you have to worry about. It's just a much more pleasant experience. Drive home, you plug it in, and depending on the range of your vehicle, you don't have to worry necessarily about, depending on how fast your car charges. We do have one of the chargers that is connected to that we got from the municipal gas and light department. So there are times where it charges lower, although correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I think you can if you really need it to charge, you can tell it no if you when it's asking to manage your electricity. But it's been a really good experience, and I'm really wishing I had gotten the Chevy Bolt instead of the Volt, but I have the Volt, and my next car will definitely be full electric. So that's all. Jay covered pretty much everything else.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristen. And, as with everyone, it sounds like, there's some learning curve, really important to think about the different models in all three of these panels. And at the same time, a recognition that, that technology is advancing. And so there are more options becoming available here. I also just wanted to raise up the fact that almost all of you, if not all of you, could have served on any of these panels because you are true climate champions and have committed to various consumer choices that are making a real difference for our climate and our community. And I'm glad to also sort of have an opportunity to highlight and elevate your voices, and also the importance of the intersection with the economics of it, because what we're hearing on each of these panels is there are cost savings to be had. And the state, certainly as a state policymaker, I'll look for opportunities to support these good choices. I know at the federal level, there are some good programs in place as well, and we'll I'm sure have champions here in Massachusetts who are pushing for extensions of some of these incentive programs as well. I want to thank everybody for your patience tonight. I've learned a lot, and I hope you all have as well. We certainly went over on time, but the content was so rich and informative that I'm glad to have had the opportunity to be with you all. I want to thank again all of our esteemed panelists and audience members for joining us. The chat function was incredibly robust, and maybe we'll figure out a way to sort of save it and share it out as well for those of you who aren't watching in real time, as I know many people will tune into this through local access stations as well as on my YouTube channel. I want to also raise up that in addition to this topic, we've had other community conversations and identified other opportunities and challenges that people may be facing. And so you can contact me through typical channels. And also on my webpage, I've put up a series of resources that may be important to people, particularly over the last couple of years with the financial and health fallout from the pandemic. But certainly there are still other resources available in any number of areas. And so you can find some of them right here on my website. I also will ask for a moment of personal privilege to thank my legislative fellow, Diana Haber-Dawes, who has been behind the scenes doing this tonight. This is her final month in our office, and she has been a phenomenal resource in pulling together this program with us. So thank you, Diana, for all of your hard work. You have been a tremendous asset to the office and to the district. So thank you again for joining me tonight to think about how to take climate action. I hope you'll consider ways to integrate the key takeaways from our panelists to build a healthier future and a stronger community. Stay tuned for the recording of this discussion and for upcoming community conversation events. Thank you so much, and be well.